multiple double IHF assignments, including the World Junior Gold Medal game, 3 back-to-back World Championships, World Senior Gold Medal game, first American to be hired full-time in the KHL, longtime AHL referee, Kelly Cup finals in the Coast, and then we even worked together in the OHL. And today you're the director of officiating for the North American Hockey League. Keith Kaval, long time no see.
Oh, it's good to see. Hockey's a small world, and it's good to reconnect. And certainly, it's been a while, but certainly excited to jump on and chat about the good old days.
Yeah, you're a guy who's done just a couple things in the world of hockey, and I probably missed a whole bunch of your stats there in the intro. And I think, if memory serves, you were even working the U-Haul back in the day.
Worked a little bit of everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the crazy part of the progression for me. I was fortunate to work, I think all the vowels. I worked the A, the E, the I, the O, the U. I skated in the Western League as well, right? So
Yeah.
been fortunate to get a lot of experience at multiple levels and work with many different people like yourself. And you know what, I was fortunate. It paid dividends in terms of building a good foundation, which really helped me be successful. And sometimes we talk about the good stuff, right? The high notes, but certainly what is in officiating, there's low notes too, and there's lessons to be learned. But certainly, I was fortunate to get that experience over the course of my career.
Yeah, for sure. And inside the community, we've got a lot of guys who are working that elite minor hockey level, looking to move up, and also officials working lower junior leagues who want to progress up to, a tier one or a junior college type of thing. So if there's a guy to talk to, you're the guy. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Let's start at the beginning. What was your path into officiating junior hockey? Because everybody has a different story of how they got their first break into junior.
Yeah, no, I was, it's kind of probably been heard before. I was a goaltender, right? And I bounced around a little bit trying to play junior hockey, trying to maybe earn an opportunity at a scholarship or something like that. And really never got my traction, right? Trying to figure out that, and actually skated a little bit in Ontario, skated in Saskatchewan, and just I bounced around like a bingo ball as a goaltender. And certainly I turned out to be a better official than I was a goaltender. But no, I refereed a little bit previous to that, right? And learned it wasn't as easy as I thought it was, right? I had this idea that officiating, what I think we all are kind of, I don't want to say raised, but sometimes the official, right? That sweater, that's the enemy, right? That's the difference sometimes in our games and stuff like that. So over time, I kind of woke up and learned that, what, officiating can be a path. And probably once I was done playing, I was 20 years old, and some stuff happened, away from the game that kind of, made me kind of reevaluate what I was doing. And got into officiating, there were some mentors, some local people that helped me, and they saw, hey, I have a passion for this. I wanted to get better and stuff like that. And a couple friends that were also fellow officials, and they kind of helped me, ended up trying out for the North American League, right? As a linesman. So, my first journey, or my first kind of entry into that, was just being a local linesman in Cleveland, right? Who had a team at the time. So, never had the experience of dealing with center line pass or touch icing or multiple fights, line brawls, all this. So I'm coming from the youth component of officiating, and this was an eye-opening experience, right? So I can vividly remember one of my first games wasn't even an exhibition; it was a regular season game. Um, I got in the wrong position as the linesman. I got inside the zone. I stopped a clearing attempt, and the visiting team ended up winning. And I should have got an assist in my first junior game. And I can just remember just getting berated by the home team, the Cleveland team, and they were playing Grand Rapids. And this was a Saturday. Well, we had a Sunday with the same two teams. So at the time, us three officials would go out for warmups, and I can remember just dreading going back into this next three periods. And I can remember, like, the Grand Rapids guys were like nodding and winking at me during warmups, and the Cleveland guys were just like looking at me with disgust, and oh, you're back, you're a hero, whatever. And I'm just like, wow, like, is this is this for me, right? Because this is like, whoa, welcome to different hockey, right? I mean, youth hockey, you can mess up a game, and yeah, there's some repercussion, but now all of a sudden this was like a new world, right? And um, thankfully Sunday I had a much better game. I didn't feel like I had to sell my stuff after my thoughts on Saturday because it was a long 2 hour drive home because we didn't stay over, and I just fortunately had the courage to go back and skate the next game. But that was an eye-opening experience welcoming myself to junior hockey, and it was like, wow, this is a whole nother world. So just basically that season, being that local official there in Cleveland, and getting to learn from some of the veteran officials. But that was it was a pretty raw moment to jump into that, right? So it was kind of crazy to start on that note.
Yeah, welcome to the jungle.
Yeah.
And so, at what point did you make the switch over to referee? Because a lot of guys, when they first get into junior, they do start on the lines chasing pucks. And a big question is, well, do I keep chasing pucks or do I try and swap over to the bands? How did it work for you?
Well, there was a couple things, right? Like I wasn't the biggest guy. I was a 5'11" linesman, and at the time I think I was weighing a buck 40, buck 50. Was kind of involved in a couple different line brawls where I didn't have the strength or the stamina, and quite frankly, I think I really enjoyed um when I did have an opportunity to referee at a lower level, because it was kind of like your game, right? Especially at the time when, the three official system was prevalent, right? Because that's all we had. I mean, the four official system didn't come in to, probably the middle of my career. So for myself, it was really I gravitated towards refereeing, and not that I was a bad linesman by any means, but certainly, you know what, lining at a higher level really paid dividends for myself when I went back to lower levels to referee, and I could kind of learn how to, basically create my own game or my own style as a referee. So it really did pay dividends being a linesman. And I kind of joke with our officials now, because we still do a decent amount of three official system. It's like telling guys that probably want to be referees, be a linesman. It's like like the parent telling the kids to eat their vegetables. Like you can really gain a lot out of learning from that seasoned veteran. Use it to your benefit, right? And that was something I did and made that conversion. And don't get me wrong, it was still rocky at times. You have to learn on your own. You have to learn how to communicate, deal with different, difficult situations, all that stuff. But honestly, it really did pay dividends for me going from a lining perspective to the referee perspective.
Yeah, and I want to get into the three-man stuff in just a little bit because similar to you, when I started in junior hockey, it was all three-man.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that in just a little second. So you started refereeing. I'm 5'10" as well, so I understand the height thing.
Yeah.
I remember some nights, you're two guys like 6'3" beside you, and then you're the short guy in the middle.
No
Uh,
doubt.
how did you get into pro hockey? Because a lot of guys want to know how they make that jump. What was that path for you?
So I mean, the biggest thing for us, and it's still, I kind of hold true to being now on the management side, is conquering the level you're at, right? If you're a young official and you're doing well at, the junior B level in Canada or junior C, and you're conquering that and you're skating championships, you're getting noticed. Your name's getting out there. You're getting recommendations. You're getting, people are coaching you. People are believing you. You're building that confidence. You're building that resume. For me, it was a matter of skating a junior B national championship, skating a North American League championship, graduating to the USHL, and working that, and being fortunate at the time to work a little bit of pro hockey to kind of get introduced to that world, right? And what a different world, right? Now all of a sudden we're dealing with adults. And you know what? At the lower minor league level, you know what? You're dealing with some pretty good players that maybe had a high profile, whether they play in the Ontario League or what major junior, or they played, college hockey, whatever. But at some level, all these players, they have some type of deficiency within their game, right? And they're trying to work their way up, no different than us. So, managing those adults and stuff like that, it really paid dividends when I would go back to the USHL. I was working the United League. I was working the Central League. So you get to see a lot of things that maybe at the junior level would happen. And honestly, it prepared you better to manage things at the junior level. So my last season working within the USA officiating program, I believe I worked 139 games through like 7 different leagues, right? And I know that number sounds crazy. Um, but like that experience was amazing. Now, was I the best for all 139 games? Probably not, right? I can look back at it now and like we grinded through some games. Did we give our best? Probably not, just from a physical and mental standpoint, the travel and all that stuff. But I loved it, right? And you could take so much from the officiating supervisors, or as now we call coaches, right? The OMs coming in and working with you, working with veterans, working with local officials, like in certain areas, right? As big as the minor league game is, you could be in Albuquerque and work with a guy that only works in Albuquerque. And you know what? He knows the teams, he knows the personnel. So learning from those people as well. I mean, there's just so much opportunity to learn, not only from like an officiating supervisor, but from the local officials and their experience and working with those other fellow officials to make you a better official. So completely fortunate to be able to learn, but it was just a process, right? And I think that's the thing sometimes I think is forgotten in today's game is, using those opportunities to learn to better yourself. It's not always going to be perfect, but I think the officials that are successful are the ones that mess things up, and they can learn from that and get better. The officials that are stagnant or maybe kind of go backwards are the ones that are making the same mistakes, or they're getting in their own way, right? Maybe the ones that don't have that rule knowledge, or the ones that can't communicate or don't want to communicate effectively, right? And listen, it's an art. It's not easy to be like, oh, I'm a great communicator. Like I can remember in junior hockey, especially, you go through different phases of trying to get comfortable in your own skin, having the courage to talk to some of these difficult coaches and deal with some of these difficult players, right? So it's not an overnight thing for you and your fellow officials, right? It takes time, and sometimes you say the wrong things at the wrong time, and it takes time, right? It's just, I think it's building that mental inventory of, hey, this works well here, maybe this doesn't work, and honestly trying to learn your own style, but be yourself, right? Talked about trying to learn from others, but ultimately you have to be you have to be authentic, and it takes time to get there. And it might be 30 games, might be 60 games. There's not a number that's like, yeah, that's the magic number, I've hit that threshold and now I'm the best version of myself. It takes time at certain levels, but I think it circles back to what I said earlier about conquering that league, working perhaps that championship, and gaining that respect, earning that respect amongst your peers, amongst the players and the coaches, and utilizing those things that made you successful at the next level.
Yeah, for sure. And even, the change from communicating with the junior level player going up to pro, that guy might have a wife at home. He might have a girlfriend, he might have a kid. They're relying on that paycheck. It's not just some 16-year-old, living the dream playing junior hockey anymore. And that changes on the frame, how the player enters the conversation, or you enter the conversation. What was that jump like for you? Because you worked the coast, you worked the Central League, you worked the IHL U-Haul, you worked the American League KHL. How did that shift for you as you started to find your feet in pro hockey?
You worked, like you just said, you worked with a myriad of different players, right? Every level had something different, right? You had some guys that maybe were former top end picks that maybe haven't figured it out yet, right? They're dealing with their own trials and tribulations, trying to get called up, trying to move up, right? So you deal with their frustration, right? And at times we create that frustration, right? Depending on how the game's going, what we're calling, what we're not calling. Um, you talk about pro hockey, it's a business, right? These guys, this is their livelihood, right? So ultimately they're trying to be successful to, one, keep their job, feed their family, all that stuff, and move up and move on. Obviously more opportunity, more money. But even like from the junior perspective now, how that's changed, where these kids are trying to earn college scholarships, right? They're trying to earn an opportunity to be drafted, right? So there's different pressures, whether it's the kids, right? And I say kids, but 16 to 20, 21-year olds, and now the pro player that's trying to find their way, right? So you're trying to manage a lot of different personalities, even with the coaches, right? They're all trying to move up. I think everyone in that ecosystem is trying to move up, and are we the ones that are getting in their way, right? Sometimes they believe that, and sometimes at times we are in their way. But just trying to work through that and have an understanding and being that student of the game that, sometimes it's not personal. Sometimes things are going to happen within the game that, we create, but sometimes things just happen, right? And just trying to go about your business the right way. But I always try to come from a place of understanding, right? And cooperation. And for me, like, communication was the number one thing, right? Having the ability to have that understanding, but also be able to stand up for yourself when you understood you were in the right, right? So it's a fine line, right? Between they talk about cockiness and confidence. You're only going to build that through that experience, right? And hey, did I say the right thing here? You're taking that inventory and working with those other officials, like I mentioned earlier, and bouncing ideas off of them because yeah, there things can go wonky, and we can create that. That's on us at times, right? So just learning certain things, the experience of certain things. I can remember dealing with an NHL goalie that got sent down to the American League. And team kept going hard to the net on him, hard to the net, and he was getting upset. And I'm like, I made a smart comment that didn't work. I said, well, you're wearing $5,000 worth of gear. And he snapped, right? He's like, it's your job to protect me. Blah, blah. And then, later on, like I kind of went back to him and go, hey, I apologize. Like I didn't mean to say that in that way if you took it that way. But clearly I know you're trying to come back from an injury. They're trying to like tactically, they're making your job more difficult. I just want to let you know from a place of cooperation, I need to say and probably do a better job of protecting you, especially if they're going to come hard to the net there and impede you in your crease. And quite frankly, maybe what I said wasn't effective, and it wasn't. But that's the things you learn from, right? Versus sometimes snapping back at a player and saying something like that. So again, that's you're learning on your feet, and that's coming from a place where maybe I was a little bit more experienced, right? So again, you're always learning, right? Like I think that's the other thing for your officials to understand. Like you're not going to wake up one day like, hey, I got it all figured out. Like every season, even in my last season on the ice, I was still learning new things. I was still seeing things that were always changing within the game. So if you don't have that mindset of growth and continuous, opportunities to learn, you're going to become stagnant. You're going to be that guy that maybe, unfortunately, you don't make it out of junior B, right? And that's a reality, right? So you're constantly having to evaluate and learn and seeing what works and what doesn't work and constantly having to adapt.
Yeah, and that goalie example's a perfect example because one guy can say something and get away with it. And then, like I've worked with a lot of guys, they have lots of quick one-liners and they're
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah.
But me, like I can't do that. I've tried it and I've fallen on my face every single time because that's just not who I am, right? So kind of have to find your personal flavor. I do want to talk because you've worked some really big games. And this is going back years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the 2011 World Junior Championship, I remember in the dressing room before a game that we worked, you talked about. I think you were like sick. You had the flu or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was food poisoning or what, but
Yeah.
I was ill probably 2, 3 days going into that game, and I was supposed to actually skate a relegation game like a couple days before that, and I couldn't get out of bed. So then that morning of that championship game between Russia and in Canada, just trying to go to lunch with some of my partners, and I couldn't even eat. Matter of fact, I thought I was going to get sick in this big restaurant, this Italian restaurant, chefs in Buffalo. I'm like, that'd be great in front of everybody and at lunch hour. Um, so yeah, you know what? I took that first lap on the ice for the game, and the place was going bonkers, whatever. And it was close to 19,000 Canadian fans, right? The place was a sea of red, and I remember just like breathing. I was like it hurt to breathe, and I'm like, we got to grind through it. And you know what? Fortunately, like we had a good game. We didn't have our fingerprints on the game. It was one to remember in the fact that I mean Canada was in total control for 2 periods. Then all of a sudden, the Russians woke up and they scored five unanswered. And I felt good about our job that we did because no one spoke about us, right? Like we were an afterthought, which in a big game like that's very important. I mean, we served the game well. We called what was needed, but it was crazy to be a part of that atmosphere and kind of be a part of that collapse. But yeah, no, we grinded it out. If that was another game in another place and maybe didn't have that, maybe I wouldn't have skated, but certainly I wasn't missing a gold medal game on our U.S. soil. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you've worked a lot of different tournaments, and whether it's the Junior B national championships or the your league finals, it's almost like those types of environments are a different beast because everything's compressed. Instead of having a whole season, you're judged based on a week or two of performance and you're trying to get to the top game. So like, what was your secret sauce for keeping your head on straight, which is, in my opinion, 90% of officiating? Yeah. How did you handle that and the pressure so you could perform consistently at the high level?
I think honestly is just trying to keep as simple as possible. And I know that kind of sounds maybe cliche, but we started the tournament. I remember I think it was like Germany against like Switzerland, right? Which isn't like the big like this is the big one, right? And matter of fact, I was looking back at some of my old pictures. You could see there was more blue seats than fans, right? It was like a 12 noon game there during that particular tournament. But just to recognize that that game was just as important as that Russia Canada game, right? And people are kind of maybe look at you funny, like, no, really. But in a small, like you said, confined time or a tournament, compressed tournament, every game means something. Every game means something to that team, right? Because those teams, those countries don't want to get relegated. And every game means something for you as an individual official because you're competing with other officials from around the world, right? Every federation sends their top official to those A pool tournaments. So I mean, just keep it as simple as possible. And that's period by period, right? Taking inventory of what's going on within the game. You're working with new partners, right? Using those opportunities, right? We would have the TV timeouts, the media breaks, having those conversations with the fellow referee that maybe you haven't worked with before, and just like, hey, what are you seeing? What's going on? And just take inventory of the game. Having those conversations with your lines partners as well. Just keeping things as simple as possible and not getting too high or too low. Because for that particular game, then it was on to, I can remember doing Russia, Sweden, and that was another great game. And again, just keeping it as simple as possible. So, um, I didn't probably think like I can look back now at how I did it and why I did it. I probably wouldn't give you the same answer. Like if we went back in time and you're asking me at the moment, what am I thinking? What am I trying to do? Um, got a little bit of clarity right over the years, like, okay, this worked, and I mean, listen, for as successful as I was in a few of those tournaments, I can also remember being sent home early from a men's world championship in Stockholm, right? And that's because I was more of a passenger than a bus driver in terms of working a few of the games and not just didn't have the confidence. I just wasn't there yet, but I use that type of experience to be better the following world championship and work a quarterfinal, and then ultimately the following year to work a gold medal game at a men's world championship. So, again, right, for all the good stories, yeah, gold medal, this or that, yeah, things go wonky, right? It's that having the ability to learn from that, from some of those missteps, and understanding, okay, what could we have done differently? And sometimes, the game throws stuff at you that maybe you're not ready for, or just that dynamic. It is what it is. But certainly I feel fortunate on both sides of the coin that I was able to learn from some of those experiences to help build to be able to produce when the games got bigger and better.
Before we get into the NA stuff, I do have to ask about the KHL because there's a lot of stories about that league. And like, how did that transpire? Because that was, I think that was what, 15 years ago, went over it?
We were 2015. So probably actually around this time in
Yeah.
August, I got an email from Matt Leaf, who at the time was in charge of USA Hockey's officiating program. And he sends an email and goes, hey, the Continental Hockey League in Russia reached out. They'd like to talk to you. And I'm like, okay. And one of the boss at the time there, basically, there's Stephen Walkham. Sasha Polikov was one of our officiating supervisor coaches within the IIHF. So I've had some experience with him back in the day at multiple tournaments. And Sasha's an amazing human being and great guy. You know, just salt of the earth kind of guy, great coach for us officials. And he reached out and he's like, listen, I'd like to offer you an opportunity to be a full-time official in Russia. And I was kind of taken aback, right? I wasn't seeking the opportunity, if that makes sense, right? And I had conversations with the German league at the time about potentially going to Germany and a few other places, but then this came to fruition, and they were offering NHL money, right? Officiating money, and I just kind of thought of him like, what, let's give this a try, right? I was still in the American League. I was still for lack of a better term, kind of that senior official working with a lot of the new guys. And to me, it's a new challenge, right? It's an opportunity to go to a country and, work incredible hockey and try to do that. So signed my contract. Took some time to get a work visa. So I mean they start relatively well. They start right now, right? Actually, they're having training camps right now in August, and usually they start in September. I didn't get over there till mid-October, right? Because of the visa issue and stuff like that. So ended up leaving the American League and I started working. And unfortunately, the powers that be and their mind was they were trying to catch me up on games, right? It was a 70 or so game contract, and I'm about a month and a half behind. So they basically, I was skating every other day. And if you've ever seen a map of Russia, um, it's not a small country. So I was basically on a plane, a train, or in an automobile every other day, going city to city to city, and multiple time zones. Um, at times was fortunate to work with some of the officials I worked with at a world junior or a world senior, which those guys are great, right? We already had a proven bond working with those guys. But then the other part that, didn't really think about is I'm working with Russians that are maybe haven't made the IIHF yet at a high level, or I'm taking someone's job that maybe their buddy is grinding it out at the lower level, and they see me as someone coming in as a threat. So there were some games I wasn't spoken to from my partners. So I sat in the corner, and you try to do the best you can, as you know. Um, when you're officiating, the best part about officiating is the camaraderie between the officials, right? We're a team. And when you don't feel you're a part of that team, it's difficult, right? It weighs on you, your decisions weigh on you, all those things. And um, I can remember for times where I'm working, just trying to get comfortable, right? Get comfortable with the league and the quality of play and the speed. And officiating supervisor or OM would come in and just screaming at me in Russian. And I have no idea what he's saying. But ultimately, like when he leaves, like I look around and go, I guess that wasn't good. So it was just it really weighed on you, right? The just trying to fit in, trying to become comfortable, and like I said, got to a point. Can't remember how many games in, but I just, what, being a little bit of homesick, being just a little bit tired of being treated maybe that way, like it wasn't ideal. And it just, ultimately I made that decision to come back to the States and come back and skate in America and work the American League. And I can look back at now at the experience. I can look at it fondly because it was really cool. And I can pretty much tell you I was the first, and I'm probably certainly the last American to ever referee in the KHL. But yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like you can look back and now I'm like, wow, like it was really, you know, I was very fortunate. But at the time, like it was a grind. It was a mental grind. It was a physical grind. And, um, it just shows you how much of that team component means within officiating and trying to feel connected and a part of that. And at times I didn't, and that weighs on you, right? That affects your performance, that affects how you feel about yourself, about the game, and what have you. So it was cool at times, but also it was tough at times.
Oh, for sure. And I think, this is a great segue because you mentioned the travel in Russia. When I think of the North American Hockey League and the officiating development program, I put like I put like 75,000 miles on my car in one
Yeah.
season. It was insane. So perfect segue into the hockey program. Um, if somebody's not sure what the program is, can you just give us a brief overview and then we'll go specific into the NA?
Yeah, no, so our advanced officiating development program, right? There's the USHL, which is our top junior league in the country. A ton of our draft picks for the National Hockey League come out of there. The USA's national development team plays out of there, which they play out of Plymouth, Michigan, right? So they produced the Cole Caulfields of the world, and many of the top players that you see now playing within the NHL. Then you come to our league, the North American League, which we have two leagues essentially. The North American, which is our tier 2 component in the States, and then our tier 3, which to those in Canada would be equivalent to junior B, maybe junior C for some of the teams on the lower side. So within our total program, we also have a youth component, which is the NAPHL, which is like our top youth programs around the country, AAA programs. So I work hand in hand with Kendall Hanley, who's a former official, worked the Olympics in Beijing, amazing human that is pivotal to our success, right? So she recruits throughout our country different officials to come into these weekend showcases. So we'll offer those like they're in Minnesota, they're out east, they're in the Midwest. And what we do is we scout. We go there, we look for officials that are basically, they're up and coming, they're young, hungry officials that maybe don't have that officiating experience in the 3 official and or 4 official system. What we do is we train, we develop, and then we try to graduate to the next level. So kind of our melting pot is is the PHL program, and then honestly we work them into our tier 3 junior component, and then likewise up to the North American League. So like you said, right, you put on a ton of miles. We have a ton of teams, right? North American League, we're in Alaska. We're down to Louisiana, Texas, out east, Maryland, and up to Massachusetts and everywhere in between. So there's a lot of hockey, a lot of officials. And we have officials that work, maybe some just work locally, no different than some of your junior leagues. And then ultimately we have some that we house within our footprint, right? So we have apartments in Dallas, we have apartments in Amarillo, Texas, Billings, Montana. We have Minnesota, a couple houses out east in the Philadelphia area, out in Massachusetts. So we have full-time officials that we put up in these houses, and they generally from end of August, where we have training camp, we will have 2 to 3 days of intensive video work, physical testing, all that stuff, and then we send them on their way, and they will skate 70 to 90. I think one official last year worked 109 games within our program, but you're getting coached by former retired NHL officials, come back and coach for us. We have NC2A officials that have graduated, that have maybe retired. They've come back. IIHF officials that are off the ice that come back and coach. So we have a myriad of coaches that are in the rinks working with our officials on a game-to-game basis. We do a lot of video work. But we're a development program, right? And we're trying to develop the next wave of officials to serve the game, whether it's collegiately, professionally, or internationally, right? So we're working hand in hand with different districts, trying to find that next, young official that has a passion for it. And it's a huge operation, right? So very fortunate that our North American League supplies us with the resources to support and get to where we have to get, probably operating probably over a $2.3 million budget in terms of whether it's the housing, the travel, the flights, the mileage, game fees, all that stuff, our coaching. So it's a pretty big business. So I kind of joke when someone asks me, how's your off season? There really is an off season now that there's management, right? No different than you. I probably miss the days of being just myself on the ice, because you got to enjoy the off season and get ready for September, October, and you really didn't think about hockey. This now has become 24/7 in terms of attending camps in the summer, recruiting, looking for the next wave of officials, and that part, and also retention, right? Seeing our officials grow and trying to help them chase their dreams. And no, it's a lot. There's some days, that are difficult in trying to manage things between the teams and when our realities collide at times, but very fortunate to work with some great people and certainly get the support from USA Hockey and ultimately our advanced officiating development program.
This is going back, I think 20 years now, right, when I was working in the NA. Uh, I, in the community, we've got officials in Canada, in the US, we've got some international officials. I can honestly tell you, going down to the USHL, working in the program in the NA was the best decision I made as a young referee. Because in Ontario, I maybe would have worked 40 games that season. And the chain, and that was a lot of four-man was just starting out. I went down to the program. I worked a ton more games. I worked one four-man game all year. Everything else was three-man. So I lived in Woodbury, Minnesota. I went on 2-month-long road trips. Like spent most of the time in St. Louis. Saw the whole country. Got to experience all the different types of hockey, pro, junior, every. Yep. But I just find that type of environment, you find yourself as a referee. But I think most importantly, the thing I learned was how to travel.
Yeah.
Because like the head game is the most important game as an official. And when you're driving that amount of miles, you have to learn how do you get yourself up for a game, how you rest, how you split your travel, like what's your routine in a hotel. And I just find other leagues where you're within an hour or two drive, they just don't prepare you for that. And when you're working pro hockey, when you're taking those fights and long drives, like you have to learn.
No, 100%. I think that was one of the biggest things that helped prepare me, right? Is what works for you, right? As an official, right? Talked about the travel, talked about rest, the fitness component, all those different things. I give a lot of credit to our officials, right? They grind, they really do, and the ones that have the ability to really have a regimen in terms of how they're traveling, how they're taking care of themselves. The one thing that we do, and I'm not sure any other league may do, is we have for lack of a better term, we have like a performance coach in terms of his name's Sean Hayes, and he's a clinical um, psychiatrist that basically we offer to our full-time officials, um, someone to talk to. Right. And it's interesting when I came back to this position, right? Obviously being in the program as an on-ice official and then obviously graduating. I can remember before I took this job hearing about we had this quote unquote life coach. And I'm like, what? Like old school, right? In sense of we unfortunately maybe figured out our troubles or problems over a 6-pack of beer, right? After a game, right? And commiserating amongst each other. But Sean has been an integral part of what we do because he's somebody that he's trained to help these officials through some of this stuff. And sometimes I think we don't think, you look at the official on the ice, we don't know what you're going through away from the game, right? Whether it's challenges within schooling, right? Whether it's challenges with loved ones, all those different pressures, we can take that on the ice with us, right? So he's been great at being able to work through with our officials some challenges that, quite frankly, I'm not equipped to help you. I can help you with the X's and O's. I can help you through a game, penalty selection, and this and that, and even some of the challenges away from the game. But for some of this stuff that some of our young men and women have to go through in this challenging world that we all deal with, like he has been a godsend to be able to manage and help. And the best part about it is, and I just don't say this just to make everyone feel warm and fuzzy about it, but he's not like a guy that comes to us like, hey, so and so said this and they're doing like he's not like that snitch, right? Like he takes care of stuff, and they have that client patient privilege, right? So certainly he's there for them. He's not there for us in terms of like trying to give us inside information. We don't need that. But like their mental well-being is the most important thing. And as much as we want the best physically fit officials, you know what? They're also the ones that are the best mentally fit ones are going to be more successful. So he's been an integral part of what we do, and love having him involved. And he's really been a godsend for our program, and really give him a ton of kudos for what he does.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing program because I remember when I was well, even in the program, you don't want to talk with your boss because that's your boss, and you're worried it's going to affect things.
Yeah.
And you don't want to talk with all the other guys because you're worried about other guys talking. But you keep it to yourself. And looking back, like it's just having that resource. I think that's an amazing program. I
Yeah, no,
hear that.
For sure. I mean, listen, we're so fortunate. Like I said, in the beginning, I was skeptical because maybe I didn't know much about it. But the more I learned about it, and especially dealt um, with the behind the scenes stuff with officials, you know what? Yeah, he's been amazing. And like I said, it's such a key component to what we do. And listen, for some officials, maybe they choose not to work with them. That's fine. It's not a bad thing at all. But I would say the vast majority of officials find that value amongst ourselves after games and commiserate and talk about situations. He's that guy that can really effectively help them with the stuff away from the game. And also, like he jokes, he knows more about officiating now than he ever did because he's learning from them, right? And some of those challenges, but certainly he's really been an asset to our program.
Yeah. So, if you had to describe your secret sauce in terms of how the NA's developing the next crop of officials, how would you break that down? Like, give us, your way of working and churning out quality officials.
I think the official that buys into what we're trying to do, right? You say secret sauce. I think the secret sauce is learning, getting as many reps as you can, and quality reps, right? When you can, wherever you're at, and just learning from those, right? Utilizing, if you're getting coaching, right? How are you using that coaching? Are you using it to your benefit? Um, do you have a growth mindset that you want to get better? And understand you don't know everything, especially you're getting exposed to new things maybe you've never seen before. So, how does that growth look like? Is that growth from the coaching? Is that growth from your own video work? Is that growth from working with our officiating coaches? Is that commiserating and working with other officials, trading off clips, looking at things, just having an open mindset? And honestly, not being afraid to fail. Too many of our guys, I think, sometimes are afraid to fail. And listen, we probably fail more than we're successful. I feel our guys don't recognize that. I come from a place I talk to guys, I'm like, listen, I'm not a big scary monster. Like, share clips, right? Let's have talk about what's going on, what works, what doesn't work. Um, I consume a ton of the hockey. The one thing I learned, I think I got better as a manager was um, I'm still very passionate about being an on ice official when I got off the ice. So kind of like I've evolved the way I manage, right? Like there'd be times where maybe I was a little bit too overbearing in the beginning. And now there's times where, guys will mess up and you know what? It doesn't pay dividends to call or get on their case, right? Um, to me, a couple of the non-negotiables, like bring a good attitude and good effort, right? Skate hard, right? You've got 60 minutes. Let's go to work. And I understand not every night's going to be perfect. Um, but there's going to be nights when you know what, you don't have it. And you don't have it. So how do we manage that, right? It doesn't need to be constant, like, hey, you did this wrong, you did that. Like, you know what? Every once in a while, it's just good to have just a conversation about life and just check on the person, right? Outside of officiating. So I've learned that over time and being maybe a little bit less hands-on. Not that we're ignoring people by any means, but certainly like letting our officiating coaches do their job, getting feedback from the teams, right? There's some coaches that I value their opinion. There's coaches I don't, like any league. But just working, within that stratosphere of how we manage their officiating and trying to help them and just have open dialogue and just trying to make them better. Um, I think the ones that have been successful are the ones that are engaged. They're actively engaged in their own development. They care. They're putting in the time. They're putting the time in the rule book and the case book. They're going to the gym. They're checking those boxes. Those are the guys and gals that have been successful. The ones that maybe have stunted, the ones that have all the answers, the ones that are afraid to make mistakes. And no one wants to mess up games. No one wants to make people mad, but this is a part of the job we have, right? Of trying to manage young men and young women at various levels of their playing career. Um, things are going to happen, right? So just I think controlling what you can control, long answer short, or short answer long. the fitness component, the rule knowledge, asking questions, and just trying to get better, and just, being a steward of the game, and just, again, trying to serve the game the right way. Again, the officials that have maybe washed out or not continued with us, they've had their own idea on how they should develop, right? They maybe take 10% of the information you give them, and sometimes it shows, or the ones that put themselves above the game, right? And that's the last thing that we want or we need, right? The game's already difficult as it is. Why are we making it more difficult on ourselves? So, though, those are the officials that are successful, are the ones that buy in, and it's not a complete, like, you got to be 120% all in, right? Everyone ticks a little bit differently, but from within my 8 years of seeing this now and seeing who's done well and who hasn't, those are a couple of the things that have been really clear.
To wrap up, I've got one final question for you. That's always fun to ask. If you could make one rule change in today's game, what is that rule change that you would make?
I don't know. I think the game's in a pretty good spot, honestly, with the skill level and everything that's developed over time, and just the quality of play, honestly. I don't know. I don't I'm not a person that looks at something and tries to fix something for the sake of fixing something. Um, if we could do something within the game, like, it's trying to get more players and coaches to understand where we're coming from, and that, not that we're that necessary evil, that we're, listen, that game means as much to us as it does to them, within a different way, right? And we care, sometimes some too much. Um, but ultimately we're a part of that ecosystem. I think that's really important to acknowledge, right? It's not so much a rule thing, but just, what's our part in the game, and how can we foster having a great game, right? Like you talked about, going back, I'm talking about some of my experiences where we had success in big time moments. We served the game the right way because we called what was needed. Those are the best games, right? No one's talking about us, and we did our job, and we were there when the game called upon it. But ultimately, like, it's our job to help. It's not our game, it's their game, right? How do we fit into that ecosystem, and know that we want to do what's right by the game? We want to keep the game fair and safe, and we love the game just as much as the players and the coaches and the fans, right? And unfortunately, at times we have to step in difficult situations and do what's right by the game. And I think if more people understand that, and maybe understand how we tick, we're a part of that ecosystem, and an important part, obviously, but truly it's the players' game, and we're fortunate to be a part of it. It's just a matter of us trying to do it the right way. And I think if we can do it the right way, you're going to be successful at whatever level you work. But I think if you come from the right place, come with passion, come with honesty, work hard, have integrity, and just come from a good place, you're going to be successful official, whether it's working a junior C game, that's working a minor pro game, whatever it is. That's gonna show through to the players. That's gonna show through to the coaches. Ultimately, we can't control what the paying customer wants or says, but I think if we come from the right place, you're going to be successful 9 out of 10 times.
Yeah. Keith, this was great. You shared a lot of really good, valuable information and experience. So thanks a lot for your time.
No, listen, thanks for having me. Anything I can ever do in the future with you guys, please give me a call.